Setting the scene, a tense morning in court. It was a Monday morning, and the air inside the federal courthouse in Manhattan felt thick with anticipation. There's something about these mornings, the way the air hangs, heavy with the expectation of something about to unfold. It's the kind of day where you feel like the entire world is holding its breath. Courtroom 9B was packed. Not a single seat was empty. Reporters lined the walls, eager to capture every moment of this high-stakes drama. Their cameras were ready, notebooks in hand, their eyes fixed on the center of the room where the real story was about to take place. Above, the lights in the courtroom cast a harsh, sterile glow on the polished marble floors. The wooden benches, worn smooth by decades of people sitting in them, waiting for justice, hoping for it, or simply watching as it slipped away. The atmosphere was suffocating, almost too much to bear, like something was on the verge of breaking wide open. And at the heart of it all, sitting at the defense table, was Ariana Lockhart, a billionaire, a tech innovator, and now accused of a crime that could destroy everything she'd worked for. She was dressed in a charcoal gray suit, the kind that probably cost more than most people earned in a month. The sharp, tailored lines of the suit were a far cry from the vulnerability she now radiated. Despite her immense wealth and accomplishments, like developing a revolutionary quantum energy technology, nothing seemed to matter in this moment. The weight of what she stood to lose crushed her. Her hands were tightly gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles pale, white with the tension. Her eyes, rimmed with red, were glazed over, mascara smeared at the corners, a clear sign of tears long spent. It was the kind of crying you do when you realize you're about to lose everything and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Around her, the courtroom buzzed with energy, except for her legal team. They were gone. 6 top-tier attorneys from Whitmore and Banks, one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms, had pulled out. They hadn't been late. They hadn't gotten stuck in traffic. No, they had simply disappeared. At the last minute, less than 30 minutes before the trial was set to begin, they withdrew. Without warning. Without explanation. A terse email sent to the judge's clerk stated they could no longer represent Miss Lockhart due to irreconcilable conflicts. That was it. The courtroom erupted as Judge Harold Brennan read that email aloud. The sound of reporters shouting questions, their cameras flashing like lightning, filled the room. Ariana remained motionless, staring at the empty seats beside her. Her legal team, who had been her lifeline just hours before, were now a void. A silence filled the space where her defenders should have been. Despite the billions she had, despite everything she had built, she suddenly looked very small. Alone. The unexpected savior, Elliot Warren. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, the kind of silence that follows a bombshell revelation. But then, from the back of the room, came a voice that cut through the stillness. I will defend her. Every head turned. Every eye in the room shifted to locate the source of the interruption. There, near the corner by the jury box, stood a man in a blue janitor's uniform. He still held a mop in one hand and in the other, he gripped the handle of a rolling cleaning cart. The man, Elliot Warren, wasn't exactly what anyone would expect to see in the role of defense counsel in a high-profile federal trial. His name tag read Elliot Warren. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone stared, some incredulous, others puzzled. The judge, Harold Brennan, seemed to hesitate for a moment before leaning forward, his glasses slipping down his nose as he squinted at the figure before him. Excuse me? Judge Brennan's voice broke the stillness, but his tone wasn't commanding, it was more one of disbelief. Elliot Warren set his mop against the wall, his boots squeaking slightly as he stepped away from the cart. Each movement echoed through the courtroom as if in slow motion. With purpose he walked toward the defense table, his every step deliberate. The air seemed to thicken with each of his steps, the courtroom almost collectively holding its breath as he neared. Ariana, still sitting frozen at the defense table, turned her head slowly, watching him with confusion and a touch of fear. She had no idea who this man was. She had never spoken to him before. But something in the calmness of his demeanor, something in the certainty of his steps, made her pause. It was as if, for the first time all morning, she wasn't looking at someone who might fail her. Elliot stopped a few feet from the table and, without hesitation, addressed the judge. I said I will defend her. His voice was louder now, clearer, as if to prove he wasn't some random bystander. He wasn't here by mistake. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of New York, he added, and the words struck like a challenge, an assertion of authority from an unlikely source. Marcus Holt, the prosecutor, a tall, sharply dressed man in his mid-50s, leapt to his feet as if propelled by sheer outrage. His silver hair slicked back, his navy suit exuding power, Holt was a man who had spent 20 years in the federal prosecutor's office, never losing a major case. This, however, was a challenge like none he'd faced before. "Your Honor, this is absurd," Holt barked, his voice rising. "This man is a janitor." He just interrupted a federal proceeding with a mop in his hand. Judge Brennan raised a hand, silencing the outburst. He looked back at Elliot, his brow furrowed as if trying to make sense of the situation. "Mr. Warren, is that your name?" the judge asked, as if testing the waters. "Yes, Your Honor," Elliot replied evenly. "Do you have proof of your license?" The judge's tone was still skeptical, but there was an edge of curiosity now. Without missing a beat, Elliot reached into the chest pocket of his uniform and pulled out a worn leather wallet. It looked well used, as though it had been carried around for years. He flipped it open and, with a small nod, handed it over to the bailiff, a burly man in his 40s who stood by the judge's side. The bailiff took the wallet, carried the laminated card inside up to Judge Brennan. The courtroom waited in breathless anticipation. The backlash and reactions. Judge Brennan studied the laminated card in his hand, lifting his eyebrows as he read through it twice. He then looked up at Elliot, his voice carrying an edge of incredulity. "This shows you were admitted to the New York bar 23 years ago. It's still active, though it notes you haven't practiced in 15 years. The judge paused, eyeing Elliot as if searching for an explanation. "Why is that?" Elliot met his gaze, his face stoic. "Personal reasons, Your Honor." The courtroom held its breath. For a moment, there was silence, the only sound being the occasional shuffle of paper and the distant clicking of camera shutters. But then Marcus Holt couldn't hold back any longer. He shot to his feet once more, his voice rising with indignation. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular," Holt argued, his voice almost shaking with frustration. "Miss Lockhart had a legal team of 6 attorneys from one of the top firms in the city. They withdrew this morning. Now, a courthouse custodian wants to represent her in a federal theft case involving billions of dollars in proprietary technology. This is a mockery of the judicial system." Judge Brennan set the card down on the bench, his eyes narrowing as he regarded Elliot. He turned toward Ariana Lockhart, who was still sitting frozen, her hands gripping the table. "Miss Lockhart," he began, his voice softened but serious, "do you consent to this representation?" Ariana turned her head slowly, her eyes darting to Elliot for the first time. She studied him, her gaze lingering as if searching for any hint of competence, any glimmer of hope. Her mascara was still smudged, her eyes red and tired from the stress, but now they focused with a newfound intensity. This man, this janitor, had just volunteered to step into the battle that her entire future depended on. After what felt like an eternity, Ariana nodded. Her voice, though soft, was clear and firm. "Yes, I do." Judge Brennan exhaled, a long sigh escaping his lips as he removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Very well, Mr. Warren. You have 72 hours to prepare. We reconvene Thursday morning at 9 a.m. He then picked up his gavel and with a sharp strike, he declared, "Court is adjourned." The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom, but it was quickly drowned out by the explosion of noise. Reporters leapt to their feet, shouting questions in rapid succession. "Mr. Warren, why are you doing this?" one asked. "Miss Lockhart, do you trust a janitor with your case?" another followed. Camera flashes lit up the room like bursts of lightning. Ariana, her face a mix of confusion and determination, grabbed her purse and stood up. She turned toward the side exit, her eyes scanning the room. Without saying a word, Elliot followed her, a silent presence by her side. The security guards moved in swiftly, forming a barrier around the two of them as they navigated through the crowd, pushing past reporters and spectators. They reached a narrow hallway where the noise from the courtroom faded into an eerie silence. Neither spoke as they moved quickly toward the exit, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on both of them. As they stepped out into the cold November air, the chill hit them like a slap in the face. The sky above was gray, threatening rain. Ariana pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders, her mind racing with the events of the morning. She walked briskly toward a black car waiting at the curb, its driver already holding the door open. She paused, however, and turned back toward Elliot. Without a word, she gave a brief, commanding gesture. "Get in." Elliot hesitated for a moment, his gaze flicking back to the courthouse, where his shift wasn't over. He still had 3 more floors to clean. But the look in Ariana's eyes, a quiet demand, made him push aside his doubts. "I need to clock out first," he said. "No," Ariana responded, her voice steady, not a trace of hesitation in it. "Get in now." There was something about her tone, an authority that could only come from someone who had built an empire from nothing. Someone used to being in control. Someone who wasn't used to hearing no. Elliot climbed into the back seat of the car, and the driver quickly shut the door behind him. The engine hummed to life, and the car began to pull away from the courthouse, the noise of the city creeping in as they drove through the streets of Manhattan. For the first time in what felt like hours, the two of them sat in silence. Ariana stared out the window, lost in her thoughts, while Elliot leaned back, his mind still processing the whirlwind of the morning. Preparation and discovery. The car wound its way through the bustling streets of Manhattan, the honking of yellow cabs and the hurried steps of pedestrians filling the air. Outside, the world was moving, indifferent to the storm that had just erupted in Courtroom 9B. Ariana sat still, her gaze fixed on the gray sky, her thoughts far from the noise around her. Her mind was racing. How had everything come to this? Her technology, her life's work, was on the brink of being destroyed, and yet here she was with a janitor as her defense. Elliot, for his part, sat across from her, his hands clasped tightly together. His eyes were tired, but there was a fire behind them. Despite the overwhelming odds stacked against them, something inside him had shifted. He wasn't going to let Ariana fall. He wasn't going to let the system crush her the way it had crushed him. The car pulled up to a sleek glass tower on the Upper East Side. The building loomed tall, all sharp edges and reflective surfaces, the kind of structure that screamed money and power. Ariana didn't flinch. She stepped out of the car and walked into the building without looking back. Elliot followed her, feeling the weight of what he had just committed to pressing down on him. They took the elevator to the penthouse. As the doors opened, they stepped into a space that felt more like a museum than a home, minimalistic, modern, cold. Everything was white, gray, or steel, devoid of warmth or personality. It was as if the space had been designed to be a monument to success, a testament to Ariana's achievements, but it felt hollow. The furniture was sparse, the air heavy with the silence of a woman who had fought alone for too long. Ariana led Elliot to a large dining table, cluttered with stacks of cardboard boxes. It looked like a mess at first, but as she gestured toward it, it became clear, this was everything. Contracts, emails, financial records, and lab reports. Everything her former legal team had gone through and discarded, claiming there was no case to be made. You have 72 hours to find something they missed, Ariana said, crossing her arms. Her voice was calm but edged with urgency. It was the first time Elliot had seen her like this, no longer fragile or vulnerable. Now she was a woman who was ready to fight back. He had no choice but to keep up. Elliot set down his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. He'd already seen the technical documents in passing, but now he needed to go through them with a fine-toothed comb. His eyes scanned each email, each contract, looking for inconsistencies, gaps, or anything that didn't add up. The first few hours were slow. Dense, technical language about quantum entanglement, photon efficiency, energy conversion rates. He barely understood half of it. But then something caught his eye. A thread between Ariana and her former assistant, Julia Marsh. In the earlier emails, Julia was supportive, even warm. She called Ariana brilliant, unstoppable. But as the emails progressed, the tone shifted. Julia's words became colder, more formal. And then one day they stopped completely. No explanation. No goodbye. Elliot moved on to the contract files. That's where he found it, an unusual clause in Julia's employment agreement. A non-compete provision that was broader than most. It prohibited her from working in quantum energy research for 5 years after leaving the company. The clause seemed odd, considering that most non-competes were limited to direct competitors. But this one? It cast a much wider net. Elliot wasn't sure where this would lead, but something about it felt wrong. He opened his laptop and searched for Julia's name. Her LinkedIn profile popped up. According to it, she had left Lockhart Quantum Technologies in March of the previous year. 2 months later, she had joined Nexus Corporation, the very company suing Ariana for theft. A thought began to form in Elliot's mind. He leaned back in his chair, the pieces starting to click into place. This wasn't just about a stolen technology. This was about something much bigger.